All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We're recording during Sunday Night Football. The Bengals moving the ball at will, 14-7 in the second quarter as I'm speaking now. Today, we're going to recap the Sunday games. We'll look at Week 10 openers and then talk a little Chargers-Jets to close. But Drew, what was your big takeaway from the Sunday slate?
I mean, we finally had a game of extreme consequence with an unbelievable ending, and it went against me. So I'm not feeling like super, if we're being honest. I've had, and like I'm saying this fully acknowledging that the oblong ball has bounced my way for almost the entire last 2 months. I'm hoping that this isn't just a calendar change from October to November. All of a sudden, I'm going to be at the on the losing end of some hellacious beats here. But I can't believe the Cowboys lost that game, Jay. I can't believe they lost. I can't believe they didn't get a shot in the end zone with the ball at 1st and 5 on the 6-yard line. There was 24 seconds left in the game, Jay. We didn't even get a chance to throw it into the end zone outside of the one kind of broken play where, I don't know if you really want to kind of really truly skewer the Cowboys for trying to go for that, as opposed to just clocking it there and having 2 shots at the end zone after the Dak sack. But that was absolutely wild because when we were handicapping this week, right? We talked about how there were a bunch of really high leverage games, some really high leverage games in the MVP market. And we talked about how, Tua versus Pat Mahomes, this is a winner is going to be your MVP favorite going away after this game, right? Well, I really feel like if Dak Prescott scores a touchdown at the end of that game and beats the Eagles, that's how we're leading this show. Like, is Dak the MVP kind of stuff? And instead it's literally, how does he take that sack? What happened there? Why is this team not more well coached? Like, McCarthy bears a ton of the blame, obviously, and just in general, it was a coin flippy game if you break it down from some of the advanced numbers. But boy, oh boy, were the opportunities there for the Cowboys, and the fact that they didn't capitalize them hurts badly.
Yeah, I think Dak, who has played pretty much his past 3 games, he's played at the level of the best quarterback in the NFL, basically, against, not terrible defenses in the Chargers, the Rams, and the Eagles. But it feels like with Dak, all of his great performances, they always come with an uncomfortable caveat, which is, in the Chargers game, it was that he missed Pollard on the touchdown at the end. In this one, it's that he kind of inexplicably steps out of bounds on the 2-point when there was no real need to, and it feels like that's something he shouldn't have done.
Oh man,
that was super key, because then, you just can't take the sack. You've got 4 chances at the end zone. I'm not sure what the live money line was at that point, but the Cowboys had to be favorite at that point when you have 4 chances at the end zone, and Philly really seemed just in complete disarray. That was. Yeah, for me, that was a very, very frustrating game as well. There were for myself personally, I think for the NFL, there were 2 giant games in the morning and afternoon slate, and that was Chiefs Dolphins and Cowboys Eagles. I needed the Chiefs and the Cowboys, went 1-1, so I'll take it kind of, but it was it was strange. I mean, I came out of that game thinking that the Eagles are probably a slightly better team than Dallas, but at the same time, you saw the weaknesses of the Eagles secondary. And I think that, so we get that awesome game. And then the next time we see the Eagles will be after their bye when they go into Kansas City.
Right.
And that is going to be, that is the game of the season to this point, because that Eagles secondary is very vulnerable. And Mahomes, the Chiefs, I mean, it's weird to say that playing the Eagles is going to be a get-right opportunity for the Chiefs offense. But in a way, I think it might be, because Dak did whatever he wanted. That secondary has struggled all season, and Mahomes. Let's jump to Miami, Kansas City, because that was the other big one. And the Chiefs are up 21-0. Money line is almost turned off because they're so short. And then all of a sudden, it becomes a game, and it becomes a game in a big way, where Tua basically misses the streaking touchdown on the final drive, which would have tied it up, and then the fumbled snap in a very kind of Miami fashion. But what did you come out of that game thinking about those 2 teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to kind of point to the high leverage Miami failures and forget about some of the really high leverage Kansas City could have put that game away a lot earlier. I think that was the right result. I'm not, saying that was a lucky win, but boy, oh boy, was that decision on a razor's edge. And yeah, the Chiefs defense stepped up late. I will say though, while crediting the Chiefs defense, what in the world are you doing, Chris Jones? What are you thinking? Like realistically, like the idea of effectively conceding 4 points for a grudge. I can't even imagine whatever the opposing, the offensive lineman must have said to warrant that type of reaction. But just absolute nonsense from Chris Jones. You're a professional. What are you doing? And it's similarly like very, very close call with Mahomes on the deep pass on a third down play to Valdez Scantling. If he connects there, game's over. A bunch of kind of why are we calling these 2nd and 10 runs from Matt Nagy and company that were a little concerning. And I'm like, if I'm going to be critical of the Chiefs, I think it kind of has to start with Nagy and some of his lack of adjustments and a little bit of clunkiness in second halves of these games. I don't know if you're paying attention to this, but the Chiefs are literally a dead nut second half under this season because not just because their defense happens to step up, but because their offense cannot do squat once the other team is adjusted to whatever their plan A is. And so I think even though the Chiefs get a huge, huge win, go into their bye now, and ultimately, they're probably going to get the 1 seed based on this particular outcome. It is still like a little bit in the back of my head, some warning signs about the way this team is schemed. And if they're not playing with a lead, I'm not 100% sure I feel as good about them coming back from a second half deficit. So there are some other pretty amazing AFC teams that have offenses that are able to literally have a little bit of an off day and then still score 37 points against the Seahawks. That might be a problem when you run into them in the playoffs. So it's an interesting landscape in the AFC, and I think the Chiefs are still the team to beat, and they still should be number 1 power rated team because Pat Mahomes is their quarterback and Travis Kelce is their tight end and Andy Reid is their head coach. But there are still some warning signs there. Do you get any of that?
Yeah, I think so. It just seems very uneven on offense, and they seem just overly conservative for a team that has Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Just the amount of running the ball in the second half was just agonizing as someone who very much wanted the Chiefs to win. I do think ultimately when you step back, like they have a top 5 defense in Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So they're probably just the best team in football just on the basis of that. And I have more faith in them getting their offense right because they have Patrick Mahomes as opposed to, the flaws that other contenders have. Ultimately, I have more faith in Kansas City's offense than Baltimore's offense. And that's why I think they're still separated a little bit, but the Ravens look pretty scary too.
And let me ask you a specific question though. If the Chiefs are doing it a different way with a top 5 defense this year, does that make Mahomes MVP vulnerable in any way?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, he has to start playing better if he's going to win, but I would project that he would start playing better because I think that he's going to go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. So I'm expecting
regresses to his average, he'll still win it, you think?
Yeah, and I think the key is that Mahomes on a 1 seed is such an incredible default MVP winning case because he's going to have, I think, the requisite stats. And the key for today was not so much about, I guess, Mahomes' individual MVP rating going up. It was more just about killing off Tua's case. And I think he's largely done that because now, he goes ahead of him in the standings. He has the tiebreak over Tua. So Tua would have to jump 2 games over him. I just find it so hard to believe that Tua Tagovailoa on a lower seed, having lost the head-to-head matchup, is actually going to beat Patrick Mahomes for MVP. So, look, it's not just a head-to-head matchup for MVP between those two, but it's a pretty weak MVP field. And now having put Tua at a real deficit, I mean, to me, it's Mahomes, Lamar. Hurts' stats still aren't great, and I think that he is going to get eaten up by the schedule that's upcoming. I think Joe Burrow is too far back, even with the clinic that he's putting on as we speak. And we'll see if Josh Allen wins this game, then he gets into the discussion too. But for now, I think Mahomes is tier one by himself because he's got the team success element. He's in the box seat there, and I think that he's going to get better as the season goes on.
Okay. Yeah, because it wasn't an especially good day for him in terms of stacking up total EPA, but he did avoid the turnovers. And, I think if he's getting high profile wins and he is not counting picks, that's a good thing for him because that's really the only thing that the kind of conventional voting block is going to hold against him, I think, is if he gets into double digit picks and there's another viable candidate with 5, 6, 7 picks, then all of a sudden it's a little bit of a tougher case.
The thing is, there is no candidate though, because Hurts has got 8 picks. Lamar's got fumbled 90 times this season. It's unbelievable the amount of times that Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, nobody counts. Nobody even knows where to find that stat though, Jay. I'm not joking with you. I'm not joking. Like,
it's actually worse because when you throw an interception, it's usually further down the field than when you get strip sacked. It's actually worse, right. And it does. I mean, it informs Lamar's EPA and his QBR with the sacks and everything. So I think it does hurt him, but it doesn't. It's not as glaring to people certainly as interceptions, and it does play into the notion that he's doing it all himself type of thing, which I don't think he really is. I think Lamar's got decent weapons and a great line. He's probably got better weapons than Mahomes at this point. So yeah, we'll see. I think that though those are your top two at the moment, Mahomes and Lamar. And to your earlier point, whoever gets the 1 seed in the AFC is certainly in the box seat. Okay. And we'll talk about all other awards during the week. But one other sneaky thing is that Doug Peterson, his coach of the year case, which was not great to begin with, but takes a real hit from Kansas City winning that game because Kansas City now go a win in front of them and have the tiebreak. And I didn't see any way Peterson was winning without the 1 seed. So I think no real interest at his price in any case, but certainly he is in trouble as well.
What happens to McDaniel's case after this?
Not in the good place. I wouldn't have thought, given he loses every big game that he plays. I think McDaniel has fallen firmly into the bottom of the second tier, really, for coach of the year. But I think Dan Campbell's the rightful favorite there. And
over Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, over Antonio Pierce. I got sucked into the Jeff Saturday coach of the year bandwagon at 500 to 1 last year. After he won his first game. I'll go back to the well. Jeff Saturday 2.0 Antonio Pierce. So probably a bit more qualified, to be fair, Antonio Pierce. All right, let's jump to Week 10 openers. But before we do, a reminder that all eyes will be on East Rutherford Sunday night. You don't want to miss a matchup between stars Sauce Gardner and Devontae Adams as Antonio Pierce's Raiders travel east to face the Jets. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, Week 10, teams on bye, Chiefs and Eagles. Which is actually a pretty big win for the Chiefs that they get to come back and play the Eagles, not having to deal with the jet lag as much coming back from Frankfurt. And then the Rams and Dolphins are also on bye. Did any of these openers leap out to you?
Well, I will say I was critical of the NFL not flexing this game out on Sunday night. I was like, really, you're going to make us watch this? But this game has juice all of a sudden. I mean, the way the Raiders played today, I mean, yes, they beat the ever-loving stuffing out of Tommy DeVito, and everyone who plays professional football should be able to acquit themselves similarly. But the Raiders all of a sudden are not out of the mix, and the Jets are a team that plays hard. So that's going to be a relatively interesting game. Of the openers, the one that I was actually the most intrigued to see, what we were going to get in terms of an open was Browns Ravens. We talked about it last week with how was Deshaun Watson going to look? Like, I was really, really hopeful that he was going to play today so we could get some tape on him, so we knew what we were getting to do a fair handicap for Ravens Browns, which is going to matter for a lot of equity in the 1 seed race in the AFC for the Browns' chances to go to the playoffs. And the Browns today held the Cardinals to 1.2 yards per play, Jay. that is not good. And I actually am kind of surprised and confused about what is going on in Arizona. But we'll kind of focus on the Brown side of things a little bit here. It's a defense that was not really able to hold their own against the Ravens last time they played each other. And yes, the Ravens had a lot of short fields. And yes, DTR was 100% unable to kind of get going, get started. But I think the fact that this opened on the low side of a touchdown is really interesting because the Ravens are playing just phenomenal defense right now. And I don't really see what the Browns are doing offensively that is all that special or interesting or different or can realistically challenge this Ravens defense. Do you feel similarly?
I do. Yeah, there's been basically no sign for the Browns offense outside of what Deshaun Watson did against the Titans, which is almost 2 months ago at this point. And before that, their better offensive performances had come with the aid of Nick Chubb, who Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford are not. So, yeah, I would expect that this is going to trend up towards a touchdown. The only thing is that the Cleveland defense, is a monster. And it just goes to show how I think vulnerable the market is on some of these awards that like Micah Parsons firms today more than Myles Garrett because he had half a sack more. Myles Garrett's team shut out the opposition and they won. And Garrett had a sack and a fumble recovery, and the team was completely dominant, admittedly, against Clayton Tune. Garrett should be your favorite there. But no, I agree. I think that line definitely has a lot more scope to go closer to 7 than closer to 5. The other one that leapt out to me is the Saints are 3-point favorites in Minnesota. Josh Dobbs, what a roller coaster that game was. Just completely ridiculous. Some of his scrambles to just evade sacks that feel like in real time they're minus 1,000 to be completed. Then he gets out of it and then turns a 10-yard crippling loss into a 20-yard gain. I would think that with a week of actually knowing the plays, that their offense is going to look better. And I think if they get Christian Darrisaw back, there's some scope that Justin Jefferson comes back as well. I would think that 3 is the line if there's no Darrisaw and no Jefferson, but there is some scope that you get both of those guys, who are the team's 2 best players, who are,
right.
Have a chance to return this season. So that was the other one that left out to me. What do you think?
I was completely blindsided by Darrisaw not playing. I missed that entirely. And he matters a ton. And I bet some Vikings, and when Darrisaw was out, I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm drawing dead. And then Jaren Hall goes down at the goal line. You're like, well, I'm definitely drawing dead now. And then Cam Akers is out there doing quarterback stuff. And you're like, what is happening here? And then he goes out and
throw that ball away, Cam Akers. Yeah.
It was a weird game. And the Vikings are a weird team, but Josh Dobbs, he plays hard, certainly. The New Orleans was another little bit of a heartbreaker for me today. I don't know how they didn't cover 7.5.
They almost lost.
They almost lost, but at the same time, like if their kicker makes a chip shatter in the fourth quarter, they win by 10. And if they get stoned, on their final drive, they kick a field goal and win by 10. So the fact that they only won by 7 was pretty circumstantial. But I will say the first half of that game, oh my goodness gracious, the New Orleans Saints defense made Tyson Bagent look like prime Michael Vick. I was like, what is happening? Bagent looked like he was going to be the rushing leader for the Sunday at one point because he was just running amok there. And it was like, and then complementing that with just elite red zone targets to Cole Kmet. I was like, man, this Bears team is very, very live. And I hang a lot more of that on New Orleans, just kind of being a little bit lackadaisical and underappreciating their opponent. I think now on the road, New Orleans is the right side here, but your points are fair. Where if Darrisaw comes back, and if if Justin Jefferson is live, and presumably if Josh Dobbs learns the names of his teammates, this is going to be a competitive game because the Vikings are really well coached. Kevin O'Connell quietly doing a really, really nice job this year. So I would think that probably stays under 3, and you can basically take your shot either way, whatever you feel like all week.
Yep. No, that makes sense. The only other one that leapt out, the Lions being 1.5 point favorites at the Chargers. And there's some rest stuff involved there with the Lions. We'll be coming off bye, and the Chargers will have the short week, but they at least have the short week going home. I'm not convinced the Lions are better than the Chargers, full stop, or at least materially so. And I think we'll get to our Monday night preview in a second, but I don't think that these teams are too far apart in terms of their rating. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's 100% fair. And I have in the back of my head been I mean, the market is telling you this, that the Chargers are a buy. They're a buy right now. Like that's what everybody's saying. So, yeah, kind of intrigued by that spot for sure. But health and availability after the Monday Night Football game is going to be something we should look at this week. Can I get your opinion on the fact that Green Bay was a no doubt winner cover against the Brett Rippon and the helpless Rams today? And if you kind of watched any of that game, and you're a sick person if you did.
I didn't
and if you're a sick person if you did, the procedural kind of sloppiness that Green Bay had in that game was so off-putting and just really uninspiring. And so the fact that they opened as 3-point dogs and have been getting bet against with Pittsburgh, the market wants Pittsburgh, Jay. Can you believe we're here? We are in this year where Pittsburgh had 5 wins, is maybe one of the worst 5-win teams of all time in the NFL. And the market wants them against Green Bay. That is entirely telling you what people thought about Green Bay and that performance today. And I agree. That was awful. Green Bay probably could realistically go, relatively quickly down in terms of rating as you look at their schedule, because after Pittsburgh, they have like 4 games in a row against teams who are substantially better than them. Like they might lose their next 5.
Yeah, I can't have the Packers anymore. They're like the Charlotte Hornets, just this completely irrelevant, nothing team at the moment. And I just don't want to think about them. There's just nothing compelling about this team right now outside of Rashawn Gary and Jair Alexander and the hope that Christian Watson gets back to last year's form. But I mean, Jordan Love was plus 0.24 EPA per play today, and that wasn't influenced by too much yak. Again, average depth of target below 7 yards. Nothing super exciting or compelling about this team. One of the strangest matchups, this Packers team against that Steelers team, 2 teams that have many more wins than they should combined, I would think.
Yeah. All right. I'll just tell you real quick, man. There was a point in the first half of that game where the Packers converted 4th down that, like, you're literally looking at Matt LaFleur and you're like, he better have the freaking chutzpah to go for this. Like, this is a gettable 4th down, and you are playing a much inferior team. Like, go for it. And they went for it, and they had an offensive offsides. Offensive offsides? You know how rarely that's called? And you see it, you're like, oh, man, offensive offsides. That's sloppy. And so they march them back. They convert the 4th down. They march it back 5 yards, and then they punt. Literally 2 drives later. Another 4th and 1, another very obvious must-go situation. They convert again, another offensive offsides. Different offensive lineman, Jay. 2 offensive offsides wiped out 4th down conversions for the Packers. I don't think I've ever seen that. I think you could comb the history of the NFL and not find another game where a team had 2 4th down conversions wiped out by offensive offsides.
Yeah, that was the Packers. Team started 2-0, and we're right there with Detroit favored to win the division. But anyway, that's a game I will try and avoid watching too much of. Packers Steelers, be other good games on the card. All right, before we get to Chargers Jets, a reminder that Bet the Edge isn't the only show every weekday during the NFL season. You can also check out the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, Connor Rogers, and myself. It is live on Peacock at noon Eastern, or airs at 4 p.m. and is available on our NFL on NBC Sports YouTube channel, as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Jets, Chargers. This has been steaming towards the Chargers basically since open. Cross 3, now it's 3.5. The total is 39.5. Do you have a lean on the side of the total?
I played some Chargers when we got the news that the Jets absorbed another meaningful offensive line injury. And I think that's really where this comes down, because the Jets have really, really been stuck in mud in terms of generating any kind of rushing offense. And now that you kind of add a new center to the mix here, Joe Tipman, their second round draft choice this year, will be their starting center. Combine that with the fact that you have now Billy Turner at right guard, Lincoln Tomlinson at left guard. Mekhi Becton is doing a fine job at left tackle, but otherwise the other four players here are minuses on your offensive line. That spells trouble for being able to get anything going on the ground against a pretty decent Chargers run defense this year, and kind of puts the game entirely on the arm of Zach Wilson. No thanks. Not interested. Not expecting Zach Wilson to come and light the world on fire, despite the fact that he has been a relative, I guess, less uninspiring quarterback when it's all said and done. Among all of the choices that we've had this year so far, there's been worse. So this is like damning with as much faint praise as I possibly can do. But Zach Wilson, I think, will make some mistakes in this game. Garrett Wilson has a nice matchup against a secondary that definitely can't cover him. But ultimately, I think Justin Herbert continues to get this team right, and I think the Chargers kind of continue to kind of put themselves back in the discussion for a wild card slot in an AFC that is very, very competitive. Herbert, in general, against this Jets pass defense is going to be fun to see. A lot was made this preseason of, we're going to attack down the field more. It's going to be a more aggressive offense. Now your best receivers, Palmer and Mike Williams, who can create separation down the field, are not available. So this is turning back into the Chargers offensive last year, where it's a lot of short stuff, a lot of Austin Eckler involved in the passing game. And it's going to make for a pretty ugly game. I think that the market moves are both correct, right? Moving the Chargers past 3 was correct because the injuries to the offensive line for the Jets. And I think the total coming down from 42.5 to 39.5, 40 is correct. And if I had to make plays in this game, I'm fine with laying the points with the Chargers and the expectation that they can win an ugly one, like 20-13 or something like that. But I would expect that this is a pretty uncompelling contest, because as bad as the Jets offense has been this year, their defense has been amazing. They play hard. They have an incredibly talented, deep line. And they may be able to get wins against this Chargers offensive line in pass, in the pass rush. So anytime we get into 3rd and long, I think it's probably going to be a punt for both teams. And I think this could be, kind of team with the ball last wins it when it's all said and done. But if the Chargers get back to a flat 3, I would expect that gets bet.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Chargers are the side here. I think that lost in the mania of the win over the Giants is that Zach Wilson was just unbearable in that game. Back to full-blown Zach Wilson going full Zach Wilson in all the bad ways possible. And that just has a ripple effect onto everything in the offense when they don't have an offensive line either. Like Breece Hall, who there's a chance Breece Hall is the best running back in the NFL. We won't know until he gets a real quarterback, because there's just no room for him to operate. He still can take, a screen pass to the house from 50 yards like he did against the Giants, because that's his capability, but he's just running into brick walls and loaded boxes. I think if you're looking for a prop angle to bet this game, I think the thing with the Jets is that their run defense is stellar. Pass defense is still good too, but teams have had more success throwing the ball on the Jets than running it. And I think that ties into Herbert going over on his passing prop, which is below 250 yards when there's no weather in New York. There's no wind, in East Rutherford, no wind on Monday night. So I think with that, even with Josh Palmer being out, I think Keenan Allen being there and the other players are going to have to fill him. It's going to be the Quentin Johnston show, but Austin Eckler contributes a lot in the passing game as well. So I think that the Jets will bottle up the Chargers run game, and it'll be Justin Herbert through the air. And then on the other side, I agree. I think that the Chargers, who have had a terrible run defense, what feels like a decade, now have a really good run defense and a vulnerable secondary. Well, I'm not sure a vulnerable secondary matters against Zach Wilson because Zach Wilson orbits his own son in terms of I don't think it really matters what kind of defense that he plays. You'd rather play a weaker defense than a better defense, I guess, but I'm not entirely sure it matters because Zach Wilson is just going to decide if he's going to Zach Wilson it up or he's going to look like the guy did against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
So
I pulled up the scatter plot just because I was curious where Wilson is, and he's below Bryce Young somehow in EPA per play. And I assume that means they haven't updated Bryce Young's performance from today because that's crazy. How could Bryce Young be outperforming you in EPA per play? That is
I believe it. I've watched those guys decent junk, and I think Bryce Young is better. And
Daniel Jones is beating him in EPA per play. How is that possible?
I know.
How is this possible?
Had a couple of good games, a couple of okay games. Zach Wilson, there's really nothing there. Even his key pass against the Giants was on the throne. Just had a pass interference call on it. So I don't think that Zach Wilson, with no weather, is going to be able to keep up with Justin Herbert, even if he's got the better defense. So Chargers for me on that side. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks, everyone, for watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and subscribe. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.